Guys, good evening.
How you doing?
Good. We welcome to all of them. We've got like 25, 30 people in here already. So everybody that's joining us out there, Facebook, YouTube, the other the other groups, please, over in the comments, let us know who you are, where you're coming from, or where they look from, text us from. It's good to be here. God, I've been down flat on my back for the last week, and it's great to see folks other than my family. So
yeah, how you feeling, man?
I feel a lot better, man. That was the old COVID-19 sucks balls for sure. That was a rough one. So
what was that, round 2 for you?
That was round 2, yeah. But the first round was nothing. Round 2 was really bad.
It was a shame to see that steak dinner you couldn't taste.
I could taste it. No, man. I got a little bit today, but it's still not real good. So, Kris Sieber, Luftbrunn, 72. Welcome to the little Geekcast here. It's good to have you, man. How are you?
Thanks. I'm glad to be here. I'm good, man. I'm full of Chinese food, and I know there's some hobby industry standard boxes sitting under the Christmas tree with my name on them. So
is that right?
Yeah. So I mean, I'm in good shape. How are you guys doing?
Like I said, I'm doing a lot better. It's
yeah, good. Thanks for hanging out with us during Hockey Night in Canada. You must be missing a Leafs game probably right now.
Oh hell no. No, I won't tell you who I cheer for because we might have words. But
I can guess it then.
truth be told, I tuned out of hockey a few years ago. It's I don't know, just kind of dropped out of favor for me. So
that's the way I was with football. I completely just said, American football. I was like, nope, I'm done.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah,
professional sports.
I love hockey. I mean, I see the highlights come by on my Twitter feed, and I can't stop it. I can't help but stop to watch them. But I don't know. Just I see how much ticket prices get to, and now it's just hard to be a fan when you can't afford to go to games anymore and stuff like that. So.
Tickets are out of control. DC's about an hour and a half from us here, and when the Bruins come to town, my son and I will go back and forth. Hey, you want to go? And I'm waiting for him to buy me tickets now. He's got a good job and all that kind of shit. So I'm like, dude, your turn to buy tickets now.
Yeah, I'm done supporting you.
Well, I think that's just it, right? We're supporting some guys that are really making a lot of damn money, and I'm going to say that hockey is one of those sports. So I think where they actually tend to act a little bit more like responsible human beings. But there's some professional sports out there, they get a little bit of money and they forget who the hell they are or what they are. That's one of the reasons why I quit watching.
Yeah. But no, 100%. Like the last time that I went to Montreal, and it's going back a while, and it was, I think it was $500 for two of us.
Oh wow!
Ooh,
right.
Yeah.
To have like sort of mid-range seats.
Yeah.
Right.
And then by the time you eat anything and have a couple of beers, forget about it.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And now I just think about how much I could spend on models with that. So it's just like,
yep.
Yeah. Well, speaking of, let's talk. I was going to talk a little bit about the Great White North. We talked about that a while ago, but it's it's kind of cold. It's snowing, so I'll digress and we'll just move right on into melted plastic here. Talk a little bit about models. I think that's what we're here for.
That's right.
I'll tell you what, before we do though, let me just a real quick see who all we got in the chat here. It looks like we've got James Beretta coming in. All right. He was in there at the very beginning. Good to see you, James. So here's one of those Facebook users from Sydney. That's a distance. You got the award so far, but we don't know who you are. So if you could go into Facebook and allow StreamYard permission to see your information, then we'll know what your name is, etc. We'll get a little picture down there, your profile picture.
I see Bruce from just down the highway from me here in Kingston. Bruce from
Laurel here.
How you doing, Bruce?
We got our good buddy Derek Post. Good to see you, Derek. Henry Kramer. I'm sorry, my glasses are new ones and I can't see real well. Our local guy here, Jerry Whiteside, in the house.
Hoorah.
Hoorah.
I recognize Jim Clark.
Oh, is Jim in here? Let's see. Where's Jim's
Oliver
name down here? There he is from Phoenix. Yep. Drew Oliver, several others. We got another here.
Jared
Good evening,
Cowell.
gentlemen, and Kris. So that's to say Kris is not a gentleman. I don't know. We'll see by the end of the night. So anyhow, let's talk plastic. What are you working on, Kris? What is this green beat to hell aircraft I see on in your Instagram feed? My goodness, man, the way you can take something of that scale and detail it the way you do just blows me away.
Unfortunately, the light's going to blow that all. Anyway, that is, thank you, first and foremost. I don't know, some days I look at the reaction that the stuff I do gets, and I just kind of wonder what kind of world I'm living in. But that is the clear prop Lavochkin LA5 that the Plastic Posse, when they had their 72 and 72 group build, what was that, 3 weekends now? 4 weekends?
Yeah, I about
American
last
Thanksgiving.
month. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I slammed that together for that build. There we go.
Wow,
and got as far as the hairspray chipping, and before I called it at about a 23:29 on Sunday night, and said that's about as far as I'm going to get. I'm not going to get any further, but we've put a bit of time into it since then. And got to tell you though, you build for almost 72 hours, and you burn out pretty quick. It was hard to get back onto that for a little while. So
that is a true statement.
But,
I mean, this is just incredible work, though.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so I've just been refining the chipping with some oil paint rendering, doing some mapping. So first sort of came in with some greens and dark greens just to add a bit of color into where the chip paint is, and then came back with some whites to restore some of the hard edges of the whitewash paint, and took a break from that a couple days ago to do the metal panels there behind the exhaust, and that's pretty much where it sits right now. So
yeah, so I wanted to ask about that, and someone else had asked earlier when I posted the stream that we were going to do it, specifically ask about this exhaust weathering and how you did this metal. Because
it's
that's
funny you
just
ask about
wicked
that.
Cool.
Thanks. Robbie Knopfs, who we all know, had and I
That's
haven't got.
That's who asked.
Yeah, he asked about that, and I haven't got back to him about it. I actually started taking pictures when I was doing the second side of that, and I went back afterwards and I looked, and you know those memes where they say, "Here's how to draw an owl," and then they show you like a circle and an oval and something else. You draw a circle and draw an oval, and then you draw the rest of the owl. That's kind of how it felt when I look at the pictures, because it was basically doing the same thing just 3 or 4 different times to get that layering, and then suddenly it's just there. But to try and break it down, so the first thing that happened there was, so that's a Gunze super metallic steel as a base over black, and then I got a quick light coat of matte clear just to give it some tooth, and then a filter of burnt umber to give it a little more color. And then it was just a case of sort of just stippling it or sponging it with transparent oils. So like transparent raw umber, transparent burnt umber, mixing that in with some transparent or semi-transparent Payne's gray just to get a little bit darker. That raw umber, when you start mixing with Payne's gray, gets into sort of a dark, black, almost blackish color. And because those colors are transparent, as opposed to a lot of the oil paints that we get for the hobby, which tend to be opaque, you can put that down and then you just lightly sort of diffuse it out with a dry brush and hit it with a hairdryer, let it dry up, and then just do it again. And that's really all that is about 3 or 4 times doing that, just gently stippling it on with either a ratty brush or a sponge, brushing that out a bit with a soft brush to diffuse it. I think somewhere along the way, based on a reference photo that I finally looked at, give it a light vertical swipe. You can see some sort of striations. I don't know whether it's from rain or something, but yeah, just a little bit with just barely moist brush just to give it that. And like I said, and suddenly it's just there. And but no, I think the using the transparent oils is really what makes the difference in getting that
Let's break
affect
that
it.
down just a little bit. Transparent oils. What do you say? Is it just a very thin oil, or?
No, there's
I'll be
actually.
honest with you, I've never heard that term before. Transparent
Okay,
oil.
so when you look at your normal, like Abteilung 502s, they're all opaque, right? They're meant to cover. They're meant to hide what's behind them. When you start getting into more artist oils, so like I use one called from Gamblin, and you look on the back, you'll see a bunch of different characteristics, and one of them is how readable it is. It's not going to focus, but one of them is it's semi-transparent, which means it doesn't have the same opacity that, my Payne's Gray actually is transparent, completely transparent. So it's almost like an ink, right, versus a paint. Whereas some other ones, not semi-transparent, that one doesn't say. So you'll get.
So I'm guessing then they're made to allow it, whatever is you're covering to come through a little bit. Then is that what the point is behind them?
You know, okay. I think it comes down to when you're actually doing oil painting as an artist process. Quite often, there's a lot of underpainting that happens there, and you'll get a lot of what oil painters will do is they'll build up a lot of their tonality, light, shadow, midtones, using very neutral colors, blacks, whites, ochres, not ochres, umbers, and then it's really just about glazing the color on top of that. And so that's where you get these different types of transparencies in their oils, so that they're not obscuring all that tonality that they put underneath it. It allows them to just glaze over that. And so that's sort of the principle that I'm borrowing here, is, you know, and I use it sometimes with my pre-shading and that kind of thing as well. But in this case, just because they're transparent, you're not covering whatever you've done before with your next coat. It's all just sort of building on top. And so what happens is you get sort of one stippling pattern on your first pass, and then your next stippling pattern can be different, right? And where they overlap, it gets a little darker. Where they don't overlap, it gets a little lighter. And then you add a third coat of that, and it all just, every little layer adds, I think, that level of realism, because I think that's where realism comes from. I mean, time equals layers, and the more time that goes by, the more layers you get. So, I mean, you could, you know, I stopped to think about 5. I mean, you could probably, if you're careful, you could probably add 3, 4, 5 more layers. So long as you're managing how much paint you're putting down, you're still not going to overdo it.
Right, you still remove with white spirit just like normal too, right? So it's like works just like a regular oil.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So it's the paint is no different. I mean, in some cases, they could even come out of the same factory. It's all about whose labels put on it, right? So yeah, I mean, and the nice thing too is a lot of those colors are also designed to be mixed. They're not designed necessarily to be used straight out of the tube. So if you're looking for to try and get some colors that maybe you wouldn't get in an Abteilung 502 or an ammo oil brusher, you get a little more freedom to mix without turning into a muddy mess. So, as much as I love my hobby specific oils, having some artist oils is really, I think, a benefit. And like the hobby oils, like, they're going to last forever. I mean, I've had those tubes now for 4 or 5 years, and they're still 75% full. So, but yeah, and the other place that I'll use that too is when I'm doing pin washes. Because they're transparent, I'm not filling a pin wash with like a solid opaque black or brown or gray, and obscuring the color that's in that channel. I'm putting basically a glaze over it that is usually darker and a little more desaturated, but it still allows some of that color that's in there to come through. So it really actually looks more like a shadow in my mind than if I were to put like an opaque color into those panel lines as well.
Well, Bruce, here, so keeping kind of in line with what we're talking about thinning and stuff and the difference in the oils, Bruce asked if you get the same effect by adding small amounts of thinned regular oils or trying to bust it down. It sounds to me like they're two different things, though.
I don't think you'd get exactly the same effect. Yeah, I don't think you'd get exactly the same effect. I think, and I don't know if there's differences in the pigments, but I suspect if you, and the other thing about that is if you have to highly thin or regular oil, that may affect, or that could affect the layers that you have underneath, because you're using a lot more thinner now to get that, to try and get that transparent effect. You're having to use a lot of thinner, and the more thinner that you put over top of existing oils, my understanding and experience is you're going to mess up or have a better chance of messing up what's underneath. Whereas with these, I can, with a minimal amount of thinner, I can still get that transparent effect.
Gotcha. And then Drew Oliver asked here if you had mentioned acrylic inks earlier. It works almost like an acrylic ink, but would a true acrylic ink work in the same way?
Yeah, I think if you've got a transparent ink, I would expect it does. And I've actually experimented a little bit with those. I haven't bought inks for myself. My partner's an artist, and she has a few that I've liberated at different times to try different effects. And I think that's actually sort of one of the things that in 2023 I'm going to be trying a lot more of is using acrylic inks in that capacity. I actually already use acrylic white in that manner. It's kind of a Liquitex white, not for sort of overpainting, but I actually have started using that in the underpainting phase. Yeah. So I'll put my black down, and I've actually started experimenting with using white acrylic ink, and again, just letting it flow and do random things and be organic, and then putting my colors over top of that.
Yeah, I would think that I've seen some of those acrylic whites used in some of the exhaust staining. Kind of brings out, especially on like some OD paint, you get the white. I guess that's a lead buildup or whatever.
Yeah, I think the lead in allied fuels. Yeah.
And then Jim asked what the brand that
the brand of the acrylic ink?
The transparent oils.
Yeah, the oils.
The oils. So, I mean, any company will give you transparent oils. I mean, I've got, not to say that all these are transparent, but like depending on the color. So that's a Van Gogh oil.
Oh, here, let me bring that in here so they can see them.
There's another one called PBO.
Yeah, I'm sure that the local Hobby Lobby or Michael's or one of the art stores would have something similar.
Yeah, any art supply store would have those. Now, there's always the issue of quality. I mean, Gamblin is definitely considered, I think, to be one of the better brands, and I think that you find sort of relatively easily. They're definitely not, there's the conversation always comes back to don't use student grade stuff. They're definitely not student grade stuff.
Right.
I have this problem where I never jump into the shallow end with anything. So when I thought I might like to try oil painting, I went out and bought expensive ones, which is, I think it's paying dividends now, but at the time it was kind of foolish, I think. But any quality oil paint, and it will depend on the color. There's certain colors that even I think for professional artists, they still want opacity. So you might have a harder time finding a transparent version of that. But I think for most of the colors so far that I use, they're either transparent or they're semi-transparent, which is certainly better than being completely opaque. But yeah, I mean, if you're not sure, like I said, any one of these, if you look at the back of them, they're gonna tell you generally what the pigment is. They're gonna tell you what the light fastness is. They're gonna tell you the opacity of it, because that is a critical thing for artists, and and they make that pretty clear on their tubes.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about this next little deal here. This chrome stripe. I love the way this contrasts with the rest of the weathering and sticks out here. I mean, this almost looks like a Molotow or something like that. What chrome is this? Because that's just, I know it's not Molotow because that stuff takes like months to dry. So I know it's not that. But
Gunze Superfine Silver.
Man.
And the nice thing is, I mean, it's not chrome. They actually have a more chrome plate than that. They have a proper chrome, and then they even have a plate silver, which is like $30 a bottle or something. But even that superfine silver, all over a polished black surface, is so smooth that it gets really close to being in chrome without looking out of place on a model. And the nice thing is, like, that paint is bulletproof, right? You can mask over that as many times as you want, and it's unless you drop thinner, like lacquer thinner on it or something, or 99% isopropyl alcohol, it's not going anywhere. So I had when I did the Mustang Princess Elizabeth there at the beginning of the year, and I tried doing Alclad initially, and then it all just peeled off with the masking. And
isn't that irritating?
Irritating. That's a pretty diplomatic way to put it there, Darren.
that typically ends up in what we call colonizing a kit.
Yeah, well, that was commissioned, so there's no colonizing that. But
no,
when I came around the second time with the Gunzy Super Metallics, it was just, I mean, they are probably for my money, the best metallic paint you can put out on a model right now.
I'll be damned.
And are those a lacquer based?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I pretty much shoot anything that's got to have any kind of durability for me is lacquer.
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of talk that we probably won't have lacquers for much longer, sort of generally speaking, which is fine. I'll keep using them as long as I can until there's no choice. But just for the way that I work, I mean, I'm not gentle and kind with my models. So having that lacquer paint on there is just an extra insurance policy against my bad habits. So
I am a huge lacquer fan as well. Whitey will tell you, they're always looking at me, and I know you wear gloves a lot too when you're working, but I don't. And with the MRP, SMF, those I just don't have to. They are literally rock hard.
Yeah.
Opposed to acrylics. So I don't worry too much about it. I like you. I'm a lacquer fan. I love it.
Well, I just love that I can spray something, and my spraying area is actually down in the basement in the dungeon there, and I like that by the time I've sprayed something, I've cleaned through the airbrush and I've brought it upstairs, I'm on to the next step, right? Yeah. And I'm not thinking about whether it's cured enough.
Right.
It's
they dry almost instantly.
Yeah. Right. And so there's just no slowing down, which can, I've got enough ways to slow myself down, so I don't need paint to be an excuse.
So Henry's question here, the wear effects, and I think that works really well with the picture we have up here. I see a base under this whitewash type paint, but it looks like there's many layers to this wear effect that you've got going on here.
Yeah. So so the process of that is, like I always start with a black. I have a near black Mr. Surfacer 1500 that I use, and then in this particular case there was I think it's a Gunzy C306. It's like a medium green or something like that. I basically used the primer as the black camo color, just sprayed the green bands, put down some hairspray chipping, and then sprayed some Tamiya white acrylic, because that's going to chip a lot easier than a lacquer. And then just came in with initially with a brush and water, and there's a few on the right side of the aircraft, sort of between the cockpit and that little port or hatch. You can see some scratches that were done with an airbrush needle. So whenever the whole thing with here I am pointing at the screen like you can see me.
Yeah.
So using an airbrush needle, doing some scratches, some parallel scratches in a few areas, like they were dragging something or something got pushed or straight or whatever. And once the hairspray chipping was done, then came in again with some oils, initially some, I think, field green and olive green, just to sort of give some color to the exposed camouflage areas. I didn't do anything with the blacks, just with the greens, and then came back in with whites, faded white and snow white, just to soften different areas out, and in some areas restore sort of chips or what have you. And a lot of that is just getting a ratty brush and kind of almost taking a nearly dry oil and just scuffing it in there. And if you like the effect, great. If you don't, you get a slightly moistened brush and you just kind of stipple it a little bit just to soften and smooth it out, and then hit it with a hair dryer and then try again. And I'm not at a point yet where I've got like Mike Rinaldi, where I've got an ironclad technique that I can count on every time. So there's a lot of time where it's just like what I did here is probably different than what I've done in any other model before, and so you just kind of go with it and see if it works. The odd time I've had to strip a section and redo it, but there's probably, in different spots, there's probably 3 to 4 different layers of oils there already, in addition to the hairspray chipping.
I don't know that there's, I guess someone argue this. I guess that people tend to get their techniques and they're tried and they're true, and that's what they like to stick with. But, so Whitey will tell you, like probably 90% of the listeners out there, my favorite answer to any question is it depends.
Yeah.
And along those same lines, I think that, this technique might not work on a different, different. I think scenarios dictate and what you're trying to do. I think there's still the basics of the basics, right? But I don't know that there's just one overall technique that would be the same each and every time. Results would vary depending on
somebody. I was talking to somebody on Instagram, I think, just within the last couple of days, and if it wasn't this image, it was the one sort of chronologically just before or just after, and kind of that question came up, and I said, honestly, I don't think I've built and weathered a model the same way in the last 2 years. Everything's been different somehow, whether it's been in the underpainting, whether it's been in the post painting, because I'm only 4 years back in the hobby. I'm still finding my way. Oil paints didn't exist when I stepped out, and honestly, if I get to a point where I feel like I've got all the techniques codified and I'm doing it by rote, where's the fun? Right?
Exactly.
The day that I stop experimenting is probably the day that I'm going to hang up the airbrush and the nippers and say, well, that was fun. What's next? It's the ability to experiment and try things and fail at things and try again that I think is probably my favorite part of the hobby.
Bruce had another really good question here. Do you think Tamiya X20A, you think that make it easier to chip or MLT? I used MLT earlier. You were talking about water on lacquers base versus acrylics. Which one's easier? So it's kind of like two-part question.
Yeah, I definitely think, not that I've done a ton of hairspray chipping, but based on what I've read and heard and in my own limited experience, it's definitely easier if you've got a lacquer base using that Tamiya acrylic. It doesn't even matter. It does matter. It's still way easier, I think, to chip than if you were to use a lacquer on top of that. Now I thin my Tamiya with MLT because whites are just always such a pain in the ass to spray in the first place, because they have such a thick pigment that I figured an MLT would just help it spray that much better. But I think if it had been thinned with water or X20A, it would have been easier still to chip. But I think the key here is just using that acrylic instead of a lacquer as your chipping coat. And then what you thin it with becomes sort of a smaller margin of effect or change.
I see.
Hey, when you're doing the hairspray technique, are you hitting the entire model with the hairspray, or just the areas you plan on chipping?
This one was just the areas I planned on. So in this case, it was all the cowling. It was underneath the cockpit sills. It was the wing roots. Sort of as far out as that, there's that sort of strip that runs down the wing.
Yeah,
sort of
the wing.
About a third of the way over. And then
along
the bottom of where the demarcation is between the blue and the camouflage, I did it along there just to represent where it probably got where I think it got stone chips and stuff being kicked up.
Yeah, absolutely.
In retrospect, I kind of wish I'd done more of it, but yeah.
Do you decant your hairspray then in order to get that control to put it where you plan on chipping?
I do sometimes. In this particular case, I realized I had a bottle of Wear Effects, I think it is. I know AK has two different sort of chipping products. There's one that's chips and scratches.
Okay.
And there's another one that's Worn Effects or something like that. And I have a bottle of the Worn Effects, which I figured, well, rather than decanting, I'll just spray that. But
gotcha.
Yeah, I do use one or the other. I'll I'll decant it out, or I'll use a specific product just to hit those specific areas.
Sure. All right. So you don't use a commercial hairspray. You're using hobby specific products then?
If I'm spraying
no?
the whole thing, like I'm also working on a Yak Panther right now, and in that case, I just hit the whole thing with the Tresemme hold number 3 or whatever it is.
Yeah,
the Rinaldi approved product or whatever.
Now, what about the time between putting down the hairspray and putting the overcoat on there, and then actually getting to the chipping? Do you? Because I've experimented around on my mule back here, and I just assumed, I think the first time I did it, I just I can shoot this and come back and do it whenever, but that wasn't the case, man. I mean, it was when it came to try to chip, it'd have to leave letting it dry for like Yeah. I let it dry for like a day, and it was like, no, this stuff's not coming off.
it's a rock.
Yeah, when I did the Yak Panther, I hit it with hairspray, and then I had to do the tricolor camo over top of it. And that was a bit of a bitch in 1/72nd scale, hitting all those little areas. And there were some things that I got into analysis paralysis about. And so it was about, and that was done with Tamiya acrylics as well. So it was about 5 days between putting the hairspray down and finishing the overcoat. And I think that was actually maybe a bit of a bonus, because it was harder to chip than certainly the Lavochkin was. But at the same time, because of that, I was also, I think, getting more in-scale chips. So it wasn't as readily flaking off like it would have been had I done it a few hours later.
Gotcha. All right.
And that's what I did with the Lavochkin, and it was not difficult to chip at all. So I mean, I think there's probably something to be said for letting it sit if you want a different chipping effect, but that's just me guessing based on a sample group of 2 models. So
yeah.
But it kind of makes sense, right? If your chipping fluid has set up a little bit more underneath there, then you've got to scrub at it a little bit more, and you're probably going to get smaller chips to start. So
yeah, it's definitely something I want to keep practicing and doing. I have some planned, some chipped up Japanese subjects in my future.
You've got that Emily in your near future, don't you?
Yeah. That's what I'm thinking of. And I mean, throwing a seaplane to boot, and you're talking some serious weathering effect. I'll probably do some experiments with other kits before I get on that. I see Kris Lovewell, he's the one who sent me that. I see he was in here. And I think I'm going to hold off on we have a thing, by February we're all supposed to have, as a club, we're doing this Japanese 72nd scale collection, and I don't want to rush through it. I can't get that done by February. There's no way. So I think I'm going to revert to my original plan was a Mavis 72nd scale Mavis, and I think I'm going to do that. And you see some of the photos of those things, and they're really heavily chipped and weathered, and so I don't know. I'll mess around with it on that. Nothing crazy, but I'll just to play with the effects and learn some techniques, I guess, is my plan.
Yeah.
I usually don't. I'm not a heavy weathering guy, So, but I see something like the stuff you're doing there, and I'm like, man, that's what I want to do when it comes to like, Russian subjects or Luftwaffe even,
Well, and I think that brings up an interesting question. I mean, there's so many levels to weathering, right? There's weathering, and I'm sort of, this has been an interesting thing for me, is sort of codifying this in my own head. To me, there's weathering effects that are sort of legacy effects, that if you were to spray that whole aircraft down or that whole tank down of all the dirt and all the dust and grime and whatever, what would you still see? Because I think those things, and so I mean that's like your paint chips on a Mavis, right? Like, and those things I kind of feel are as much a part of the character of the aircraft or the tank or the ship as its physical structure, right? We all kind of know that in a lot of cases those Japanese planes were as much silver as they were the green or whatever. So there's that side of weathering, which is again those legacy things, and then there's the dynamic weathering elements, the grease, the mud, the dust, boot prints, that kind of thing, which can change by the day depending on what's happening. And I think there's a lot of room to do some of that legacy stuff and just leave it there, because it's still going to have so much character and it's still going to say so much more about that particular subject than if you had just sort of done it clean museum style, without it turning into a giant months-long project that you have to figure, okay, I got to do this, and I got to do this, and I got to do this. It's just, no, I got to put the green down, then I got to chip it and add some exhaust stains and whatever. And you can say that's done and weathered. It's just not taken to that nth degree like some people do.
Mm-hmm.
But still, like I said, has so much more interest than just, well, here's that whole plane if it was totally green.
Yeah. Can't do that.
Yeah, like it, and that's in reality. It's like, unless you're building it for the Tamiya catalog, like where else did you actually ever see them like that?
Yeah, exactly.
We've had that discussion. When we do a review build, if you're doing a review, that type of build is it's for the average modeler. This is what the model looks like with the paints that are called out and it built. And of course, with the instructions of what it looks like when it's done, and then you have, I love the subtle weathering as well. I like the way you put the legacy stuff, the handprints, the boot marks, not not the stuff that makes it look like it's just been pushed through a ringer. Now, for your current build, that's appropriate. That's the way those airplanes were. When we do a Pacific World War II Corsair, they were beat to hell. Those are ones you would expect to be seen beat to hell. F-22 sitting on the flight line at Nellis, not so much. It's just
exactly. We were talking about the F-35 earlier that Whitey's working on. Like, they haven't been in service long enough to really get to that degree of weathering that we normally think about, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, some of them, and this happened. I think this all sort of kicked off for me when I was doing. I did a P-40B as a commission, the Flying Tigers, and I put some test paint down on a mule to see just what the color was like, and it occurred to me sort of then and there. It's like these were operating on like in remote China. Like it is so wrong to make them clean.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's just I can't look at that airplane and say, yeah, that's an accurate representation of that airplane. They were not like that. And I mean, I was commissioned to build it clean. I can't do it. I got to build this aircraft the way that I think this aircraft should look like. And so I meant a bunch of underpainting and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, when it was done, I'm like, yeah, I'm happy with that. And I don't think I would have been had I just sprayed the basic colors and sent it out the door. Right.
No.
And I think that's, it's obviously it's not for everybody, but I think, if you're trying to build something that's representative, then a certain amount of weathering is going to enter into it. Like you said, whether it's a Corsair that out in the Pacific where they got hit by coral sand and salt and everything else, like paint didn't stand a chance there. So, showing a bright blue one just doesn't seem right to me.
Appropriate weathering. There it is.
Yeah, look at that. That's fantastic.
It's absolutely gorgeous.
Ooh, man.
The oil in the tanks, etc. It's just
I'm just blown away at that you're doing that at 72 scale, that you can bang it out like that. I can't get a good demarcation line at 48 scale. I'm pushing it. So.
I don't know either. Not without tape, and then it looks like tape,
Yeah.
Well, and it's funny, like it's neat to and this is what it comes back to, is discovering how you view things once you've done them a few times. And I mean, tape's a good example. Like I'm going to be building a Mirage F1 for the MiG killers, and it's got a tight camo. I think the one I'm going to do is it has a tight camo, kind of a blobby whatever pattern. And like I've looked at the photos, and it's a super tight demarcation line.
Yeah, there are those
The
out
problem
there,
for
sure.
me is those don't. When you do a super tight demarcation line in scale, to me it looks off.
Yeah.
Right, it's almost
Yeah.
too sharp. It needs to be diffused just a little bit. Just in the same way that we kind of put filters on things to unify the colors, I think you almost need just that little hint of softness just to. And maybe it's because I wear glasses and I've been blind since I was 10, and I don't think I've ever seen anything clearly in my life. But I almost think that needs just that little hint of softness, just to let it blend and come together a little bit. So I haven't figured out how I'm going to do that pattern and sort of follow that rule. I might have to cheat with some oils or something like that. But yeah, it's funny the little rules that you start coming up with for yourself as you start building these things and saying, no, that's not right. So we can't do it like that anymore. And
so a Mirage F1 mid-kill, was that a Gulf War One then?
no, that was South
or...
African.
Okay, who were they going at it with?
They were the kit itself is from Special Hobbies, and it's actually called the Commie Killers.
Okay.
And it's a single South African pilot who on 2 occasions shot down Angolan MiG-21s.
Wow, that's awesome. See, that's the kind of stuff we were looking forward to seeing from when we come up with the idea for the build. It was like, yeah, man, let's I hope people are thinking outside of I'm going to do a Vietnam subject. I'm going to do I've had an F8 in my stash I've been wanting to do. So I'm kind of, I'm staying with the pack. But when we were talking about it, I was like, yeah, I hope we see like really obscure stuff, because obviously, African wars, Israel, Mideast conflicts too. There's tons of stuff there, man.
Yeah.
So hopefully, stuff outside of USN and Air Force, U.S. Air Force stuff. So that's cool. That'll be great.
Yeah, I don't know if it's poor Google foo on my part, but that was one of the things I was doing was I was sort of going through and like somebody grabbed the Sea Fury or the Fury pretty early on. I'm like, all right, well, I can't do that.
But
I'm like, so I'm like, how do you search for what plane shot down MiGs? Like, it's just not a Google search term that seemed to generate much. But I was like, okay, was there like any Sukhois maybe that did that, or was there another MiG that did that? Like, what's sort of the most, like you said, most obscure kind of example I can find of that? I mean, there's going to be everybody else is going to cover all the known bases, right? I like being off in the weeds. Well, I like being off in the weeds. I build 1/72 scale, so what can I do that's in the weeds and then even further into the weeds? And then I found this Commie Killers kit, and I'm like, I like Mirages. They're pretty cool, so we'll give that one a go. So I've got it. There's a choice. There's sort of I think it's like a dark green and a sand color with that blotchy pattern, and then there's one that's almost like similar colors to what you'd see the Greek Air Force using, grays, sort of haze grays, with a sort of another warmer gray. But then it's just got this basic sort of diamond pattern when seen from the top, and it just doesn't have that same. Like, I love the colors, but that diamond pattern just seems kind of dull. Apologies to everybody in South Africa, but so yeah, I think I'm gonna go with the sand and green. But
let me see.
Yeah, Vivian Watt said he used to see SAF Mirages as a kid. So
yeah, that's cool. Let's go back here to Jared's question. I'm going to turn this over to you guys because I too find myself, and Whitey will tell you, I've got so many kits sitting here that are waiting for paint in the next step, and it's all because of that anxiety right there. I feel it. It affects me, and I know, intellectually, I know that I can fix whatever I mess up. But there's just a part of me still that says, "Oh, I got so much time in this. I really don't want to F it up," because of the time I've got in it.
And it gets worse the longer you go into it.
My motivation is I just don't like having a bunch of shelf queens, man. So I'm just I try to build one subject at a time. So plus I want to see it done. But I don't know. A few years back, stuff like that would jam me up. I'd be like, oh man, I'm gonna screw up this paint job. Now I'm just kind of like, whatever. I'm shooting paint at this thing, and whatever it comes out like, I'm just gonna be happy with it or not. You know, it depends, to borrow your phrase.
It depends.
You know,
Use it.
you know, so that's it for me, man. I just don't want to have I have a couple of shelf queens kicking around just from group builds, or like you talked about the 72-hour build. I think I've done 2 of the 48-hour builds and have failed miserably at both. So I have a Bearcat back here that I still need to finish from like a year ago. You know, so I just hate that. If I had 5 shelf queens, that would cause me anxiety, probably, you know, or I'd feel like I'm never going to get them done, and I'd probably just wind up, you know, shit canning them. So that's my motivation, and how I push through is just that, I want the project done. I want to see it done, you know. That's why I started the thing. So that right there, that's my push. That's my motivator, I guess, you know. And if I screw it up, I think I'm probably going to learn something along the way. You know, that's
always, so you can always turn a negative,
you know,
into a positive that way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, that's what it's all about, is learning, problem solving.
Well, and that's what modeling is, right? When you boil it down, modeling is problem solving.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Right? Like how and like how do we make an aircraft, a tank, a ship, whatever, which is made of steel and iron and carbon fiber and aluminum and all these different things, and then covered in mud and grease and oil and then affected by time. How do you make all that with plastic, brass, photo etch, resin, and then hobby paints? Right? It's all problem solving. Yeah. And that's the joy of it, right? And like you said, part of that is, if you make mistakes, what are you going to learn from it?
Yeah.
Right. What are you going to take away?
Otherwise, we'd be pulling die-cast airplanes out of boxes and putting them on the shelf,
right.
You know.
Yeah.
So that's
absolutely
exactly it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite parts, is trying to figure the thing out. That's, you know, anybody that's looked at my blog here lately, the new blog there, it's doing that Kitty Hawk 860, for Christ's sakes. I mean, it was just twisted and warped, and you know, you're trying to figure out what this instruction meant and why this doesn't fit. And you know, it's the problem solving piece, I think, that really I dig the most.
Yeah.
And
I mean, in those cases, I mean, that's just the added complexity of something that's not molded very well, right?
Well,
so
true.
you're not only dealing with the stuff that you're prepared to accept, right? But it's like, oh, now it's molded like crap or engineered like crap, and you know, somebody ran into this with a canopy on a front windscreen on an aircraft recently, and they found that there was something with a wheel bay. If the wheel bay was installed just that little bit high, it pushed everything else up the line just up a little bit, right? And so and so somebody else came in and said, yeah, I discovered, fortunately, because I built it slightly differently, that I had to do something to the wheel bay before I glued it in, and then it was fine, right? And that's part of that problem solving, is doing all that dry fitting, taking that as far as you can to see where all those potential glitches could be, and hopefully fending off any of those problems before you've got a ton of glue invested in it.
Yeah.
But then once you do, okay, well, what do I have to shave down to make that work? Right.
That's why so Bruce just popped off one of my favorite sayings, and that is a true statement. But my next favorite is test fit, test fit, test fit. For that very reason, if you're not test fitting 3 or 4 steps in advance, then you're setting yourself up for something. Especially if it's something, it's not a shake and bake kit. If it's anything with any degree of difficulty to it, you're not doing that, then you're really, I think, setting yourself up for failure down the road.
Yeah,
you're right. The trickle down effect. One little thing off, and you're screwed.
Yeah. Well, and I found that a little bit with the Yarma Hobby Mustang. So I finished that, and I had a few guys say, "Oh, you didn't end up with a seam here, or you didn't end up with a kind of a glitch here." And I put more test fit right off the bat into that kit than I had with any other, and partially because I found, like, okay, for starters, it all fit really well to start. but when you look closely on a lot of mating surfaces, there's little machining artifacts where, it's just a tiny little lip, or it had just sort of overmolded a little bit. And, the difference from having just a slight gap to having an absolute perfect fit was just gently shaving that off. Right. And I found like you had to sort of go over every major mating surface. But when I did that and I sort of cleaned everything up as best I could, like there was not, with the exception of that little split on that panel right on the front of right ahead of the leading edge of the wing.
Mm-hmm.
There's that one little panel that takes some filler.
That little square panel.
Yeah. Aside from that, there's not a lick of filler in my Mustang. And it was just all that, just that tiny little bit of, removing, and these little ridges are like 0.1, 0.2 millimeters in width, probably half of that in height, but it's just enough that if you don't clean it up, it's going to change the fit of your kit.
Yeah, I've got that on right down the nose.
Yeah.
The P39 here, you just have a little bit of filler for that. There's this one here was there. I ran into a lot of what you're discussing right now. It's just little things. If I would have gone back and cleaned this up a little bit, then my fit over here probably would have been a little bit better. There was nothing horrible.
Mm-hmm.
It's certainly not unbuildable. These little kits are wicked cool.
Yeah.
But it's just paying attention. But that's good engineering getting in the way.
Mm-hmm.
So there's such thing as a properly engineered kit. I'm not used to something fitting that well, and then of course, if you trim too much, you could screw yourself that way too.
Yeah. Well, I found that with that 109 G6. When I came back, I was at the Daily Hobbies down in Whitby, which is basically my local hobby shop, about an hour away. And I was like, yeah, it looks pretty cool, and I want to build an airplane, so I'll give that one a go. And I mean, I've built Tamiya kits. My first real kit was a Tamiya Lotus race car, and I had sort of forgotten that they were the best. And so I had actually gone and sort of sanded a few mating surfaces just because that was always what I had done. And that little bit of sanding, was enough to throw out, oh crap, I got to put a little thing of super glue down there because I've effed it up, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, if you look at Tamiya and Arma, you could argue the fit of them is like within a few percentage points of each other. The difference is the Arma just needs that tiny little bit of a cleanup to get rid of those sort of machining molding marks, whereas Tamiya is flawless. Right. There's none of that to do. You just put it together.
Yeah.
Right.
It's also little things like on the leading edges where they put the sprue gates.
Mm-hmm.
They put the sprue gates in some pretty in some not really good places. They're easy to clean up. They're easy to get rid of. It's not difficult, but it's just little things like that get me with Arma.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If it wasn't for that, they'd be right there. I mean, they'd be neck and neck with each other.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my Mustang was as much fun as I've ever had building a kit, and that includes Tamiya. And I think maybe it's because they weren't Tamiya. Like if it was Tamiya, you go, yeah, that's Tamiya, and that's what you'd expect. You'd expect nothing less. So when you had somebody like Arma come along and give you a kit like that, and you go like, holy crap, like this is good. You get that element of surprise that makes you feel that much better about it.
Got a few of them sitting right here. And I'm not a 72nd scale builder, man, but I tell you what, they've made me a fan. They really have. Well,
and I think the other thing, that's happening in 1/72, we're seeing 1/72 scale kits that don't look like 1/72 scale kits. They don't build like 1/72 scale kits. So if you're a 48 scale builder, I'm not suggesting that they're going to win anybody over 100%. Go, well, what do I need 148 scale for? And it's increased cost. Never. But if you're looking for something fun to change up your routine or something, it's not going to feel anywhere near as removed as it would have 10 years ago, right? Where you're like, oh man, this is so obvious that it's not the same thing.
Well, the simple fact that I can go in and I can detail like the P51. I mean, that thing it's a shrunk down 48 scale kit, and you can detail just like you can a 48 scale with no problem whatsoever.
Yeah.
And
well, I mean, there's like 28 pieces in the cockpit.
Yeah.
Right. And there's 20 and there's 28 pieces in the cockpit and there's 23 decals. Like how many, aside from a 148 scale Mustang, how many 148 scale kits are like that?
Yeah, those things are just. I mean, that looking back, what turned me off from 72 scale was just the fact that growing up in the 80s and 90s, it was 72 scale kits were clunky and not detailed. You had a cockpit with a seat and some sort of representation of a stick, and there you go. Or you had some guy that was a blob of plastic that was stuck in the seat. And so that's where, looking back, that's where I went into 48 scale stuff, was just, oh, wow, look at these, the monogram kits of that era had detail to the cockpits, and to the wheel wells and things like that, so that's what made me a 48 scale builder, if you wanted to, put me in a category. But if it was armor kits kicking around, and that type of stuff, holy cow, yeah, okay, I might have been convinced to go the other way.
Yeah.
Well,
and it's funny, like it's been fun. I've made no secret that I'm an Arma hobby poster boy fan, whatever. And so that's attracted a lot of people. Anybody who's picked one up, it seems like they want to tell me about it, which I think is fantastic. I mean, I'm happy to be that guy. But you're right. Like, the first kit I ever actually built was a monogram A4E Marine Corps Skyhawk. And I can tell you, by the time I was done with that, those spiders in Lord of the Rings, and they would catch the people and then they'd wrap them all up in thread. And that's what it looked like. Right. It looked like it had entered like a spider web or something. Like it was just tester's tube glue all over it. And the decals were peeling off it as soon as they dried. And I don't know, maybe that's why I refused to build a Skyhawk after that. But I actually found that kit last year at Heritage Con, and I bought it. And I opened it up. And like you said, like the detail that was in those monogram kits way back then, was really impressive. Like, I can see why a bunch of people went into 48. Right.
Yeah.
And so it's nice to see that 1/72nd scale is kind of casting off that, that reputation as just being, just the basic alternative. Right. Whether it's Arma hobby, whether
absolutely.
It's model Svits or Clear Prop. I mean, Clear Prop put some incredibly small
Clear Props. Yeah.
It's just, you sit there going like, it's Levantin. There's a couple pieces like, how do I get this off the sprue and then clean it up? Because there's no actual piece to hang on to. Right. When I remove that sprue, I'm removing more sprue than I am part that I need to put in. So, I mean, I think it's great that it's finally getting a reputation for some quality. I hope it spurs on a new generation of builders to maybe say, well, I may not stick with 1/72nd scale, but I'll consider it as equally as I would 148. Because the flip side is there's so much cool stuff happening in 148 that I can't see anybody saying, oh, I can never build a 148 scale kit. Right. And the F-35 is a great example. Like, that kit just looks so amazing that I don't think there's anybody who wouldn't want to give that a go.
So you mentioned, I'm sorry, I got sidetracked. I was looking for, thought I had a picture of that Arma Hobby P51B cockpit. I really want to show that because I thought it would be cool to show the folks out there just how detailed that is. But I can't find it, so it is what it is. You talked about cars a little bit, that you do cars. I've seen some sci-fi stuff that you've done. I've seen some tank stuff that you've done. You mentioned cars, and now we mentioned 48 scale as far as size. So what is it? I guess the better thing I could ask is, what do you don't build? What is it you don't touch?
there's nothing that I wouldn't consider.
Right.
And I think when I was chatting with the guys from the posse, I said this: I'm a bigger fan of kits than I am of subjects.
Yeah.
Which is when you couple that with somebody who likes to build things realistically,
Mhm.
that's a real liability, because when you've got interests that go all over the place, catching up with those with reference is really hard. Like if you
Yes.
like United States Navy subjects, well, you can probably buy 4, 6, 8 books, and you could probably have that covered.
Yeah.
Right. You know, I've got 60 race car kits downstairs. I've got a bunch of race car books from my before time in the hobby. I've got 60 aircraft kits now downstairs from my now time in the hobby. I've got Bondi sci-fi kits. I've got a few Gundam kits. I've got all kinds of kits that in
I've
most
got Machine and
cases,
Krieger now.
yeah, Machine and Krieger's another one.
Yeah.
You know, some of those I got because group build stuff, and you think, well, maybe I'll jump into that, and so you buy a few, and there's other things that are cool like Machine and Krieger. But in a lot of cases, if a kit is really interesting, if it's doing some really neat engineering stuff, there's a better than average chance that if I have the money, I'm going to buy it.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what the subject is. In other cases, like if ClearProp says, hey, we've got our new kit, there's a pretty good chance I'm going to buy it. Just because I love what they do. And the same goes for Arma Hobby. And so I don't see myself as a builder of any one particular genre. I'm a builder of kits that I think are really, really well done. And that comes back to what Bruce said about life is too short for crappy kits. Well, I'll take it one further.
Yeah.
I mean, my motor gets going when kits are really showing the extent of what we can achieve in this hobby.
Yeah. I like the one. Very well put. Very well put. I'm a detail focused person. I think, we talked about it earlier about the 72 scale kits, specifically Arma. And what was it, 20 something, 25 pieces within the P-51 cockpit alone, right?
Mm-hmm.
So highly detailed. That's what really gets my juices flowing, is a lot of detail.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the main reasons why I really wasn't drawn to 72nd scale to begin with, the old Hasegawa stuff, going back to what Whitey said, you had to use tape lap belts. There was just no detail in the cockpit whatsoever. So to do a canopy open, forget it.
Yep.
You're not going to. But I mean, for crying out loud, man, I don't know if the folks can see. Just the lap belts alone in this little seat here is just the detail they're popping in these things is just amazing.
And that's all out of the box, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's right there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that said, when I look at a Tamiya 12 scale, Suzuki motorcycle and all the detail that's going in, the stuff that you can visually see,
Mm-hmm.
the wiring, the hose, the weld lines, the nuts, the bolts, that just really gets my juices going. So like you, it really doesn't matter the genre. It's the detail piece. It's what am I looking at? I just love realism in miniature.
Yeah. Well, and it's neat you talked about the motorcycles. So I've got a bunch of the Tamiya motorcycles as well. And what I really love about the motorcycles and the cars and Tamiya in general, and this is what I remember from when I first built some of their F1 cars, is going through the instructions, how they told you what everything was.
Mm-hmm.
Right? This is the starter. Yeah. This is ignition coil. So immediately I didn't feel like I was building a model. Right? I felt a bigger connection to the one-to-one subject than if it was just part A goes with part B, then slide in part C. Right? I mean, there was something special building something that you go, okay, that's the engine block, and here's the exhaust, and here's the ignition coil, and here's this, and and then they'd have photos of the real thing. And like when you're a kid and you're just discovering the hobby, I mean, that ruined it for a lot of companies because I was never going to buy their stuff after. Like, how do you build a Tamiya F1 race car or motorcycle and then go and build a monogram stock car or something else. I mean, I get it if it's your thing, but if you're more into the kit, like how do you go from that to that and go, oh yeah, this is the same, right? It's it's not, and it's not on a lot of different levels.
No,
and like you said, Darren, I mean, it's detail oriented. You're getting all the details in the kit. You're getting all the details about the car. It's just way more interesting as a build.
Yep, it really is.
And in the case of Arma Hobby, like, when you open their kit and you start really looking at those parts and you see like little tiny molding on the tires that says Firestone or Goodyear or whatever.
Yeah.
And you need a magnifying glass to read it, or all the Christmas of the details in the cockpit. I mean, that's just, you just have a happy moment.
That's why I was trying to find that picture of the IP from that P51 from Arma. I mean, with just a little dry brushing, you could see the North American logo in there. You could see where it says it was push something to release brake. Or you can read it.
Yeah,
you can actually read it. And I've got a picture of it sitting next to a penny. Which just really, it really puts things in perspective.
Yeah, I can tell you, I was very vocal about when I actually forget what I found. I found, I think, one of my old printing loops, and I put over that piece of plastic and went, like, holy shit, you can actually read the instructions. I know a little bit about how to start a P51 because it's molded in this plane. So, like that gets me really excited to see that kind of stuff. And so it's neat. Kyle Williams alluded to it. Like in 1/72nd scale, one of the nice things I like about that scale is you can build tanks, you can build planes, you can build X-wing fighters and Y-wing fighters, and in some cases ships, and like you can build a lot of things on the same scale and get a representation of size versus size versus size. But I think because 1/72nd scale is going through this renaissance, it's nice to be there when this is happening. It's nice to say this is sort of my focus while this is happening. Not that it precludes me from building anything else, but to it's nice to attach myself to that and say, yeah, I'm, if this thing gets more popular, it's fun to say that I was there in the beginning of it. So
yeah, wow, that's pretty incredible right there.
I mean, there it is. Yeah, it's just insane.
Yeah,
and that and look, and Arma doesn't make it difficult for you either.
No,
they really don't. A little dry brushing, some decal work, you're there, and it's not real difficult. And Will Pat's already kind of busted my hindsight about my mold line. I had to go back and take that off, but anyway, that was a
if it's going to be anybody, it's going to be Will.
That was a different story. It's just
we all owe him a
maybe that's supposed to be there.
Yeah. Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, hey, go ahead.
I just want to say thanks to Henry Kramer there about the F-35 saying it's coming along nice, and it's not hard to not make this kit come along nice, to be honest with you. I mean, we were talking earlier, the engineering is just incredible the way this thing goes together, and I'll tell you what, if you build it with the weapons bay closed, it would be a heck of a lot quicker a build, I'll tell you, because doing that weapons bay is taking me, God, I don't know. And I'm, life and work and all that kind of stuff. But, something that should have took me a couple of build sessions to do. It took a while, just the painting and then getting into the detail painting of it. Cause there's just a lot of
more detail painting than you're used to, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, the pics look great, man. They really do.
They're very thorough with the instructions. Like, I wouldn't know to paint these couplings red, yellow, etc. But each and every one of those things is pointed out in the instruction sheet. I mean, it's just so thorough. And I will say that pay attention to not just the steps, but within the steps. Tammy likes to break it down like, one, put this part first before this one, or else you will F yourself if you don't pay attention to that.
Yeah, well, you can trust them that they've probably thought this out a lot more than you have.
Yeah. Yep.
So, no, it's funny you said it'd be a lot quicker to close the weapons bay, but I almost think what's the point of building that model?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. You gotta have, it's right there, front and center. So I'll pop a couple of. I think, again, I said I was doing the Norwegian one, so I'm gonna have a lot. I'm seeing a lot of pictures of their aircraft out on patrol or on alert with the outboard pylons with the AIM-9Xs. So I'm gonna do that, and then within the bay, I guess I'll go with a couple of AMRAAMs in there and do it like it's in air defense mode type of thing.
Okay. The one thing about Whitey will never pass up an open weapons bay. He will never pass up a folded wing. Never.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah. If the wing fold option's there, it's getting folded. It's a Navy airplane. It's supposed to look like that.
There you go. That's what that's how they spend most of their life, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Then we talk about things being in their natural state. Well, there you go. Even
back at the beach, right? They're folded.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say that doing the MiG killer I'm doing with aircraft 410 there, the Sunliner 410, I was there that night that day they launched, right, with that MiG kill, and to not have the wings folded like it's sitting on the ship is bugging me a little bit, but but it is what it is. I'm not going to go to that length of trying to cut and do that.
Oh, I thought they gave you the option to fold with that kit.
Not on this kit. No.
Mm-mm. All right.
So it is what it is. So this is the first time. I don't typically build folded wings, and but this is the one time I wish I could. But way too much involved for a group build.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's good to have boundaries.
Yeah. So it's Edward planning to do a 3D weapons bay?
3D, weapons bay.
I just saw that Edward came out with another new rivet set. Forget what aircraft that was for.
Yeah, those things are pretty incredible. Those
was it aircraft or was it aircraft or helicopter? A fixed or rotary?
I don't remember now.
SC-20 was there one coming up for an SC-25?
I got to look it up. It was I can't remember. Now this is going to kill me. I'm not going to be able to sleep tonight without knowing.
Might have been an SU-25.
That sounds familiar. But they had a picture because it already has rivets on it. They just redid the detail. I guess the thing here is to sand all the rivet detail off.
Someone's chiming in that it's a suit SU-25.
It's a SU-25.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me. I know we're getting late into the stream here, but just for folks out there that haven't allowed StreamYard access to Facebook, this is what we get. So please let us know who that is that's chiming in. But SU-25.
I agree with you there on that comment there, Colin. I would, I'm building this thing out of the box, but because it was, sent to us as a review sample. And when and if I do my own, I don't plan on doing anything aftermarket with this kit. Even the cockpit and the seat. Typically when I build a jet, I'll do the seat. A resin replacement on the seat, but even the seat in this kit is just incredibly detailed, and it's a multi-pod affair, and it looks really good.
Now I just got the kit.
That pilot figure too.
Yeah. And
I just
it fits right in there. Hand on the throttle, hand on the stick. Nice.
I just got the kit, so I haven't really had a chance to really dive in head first with it. But is there any photo etch like lap belts and stuff for the seat? I know that it has the O2 bottle on it. It's got all sorts of really, really cool details, but
it's got decal belts for the seat.
Oh, okay. Decal.
So that might be one thing I'd probably add then if I wasn't going to put the pilot in there.
Yeah.
But I'm going to put the pilot in there, so it's want to have the jet pilot powered up, because otherwise if it's powered down you just have a black flat screen.
Yeah. That's the way I like it.
Now, is the pilot molded then with belts coming off the shoulders, or
Yeah.
yeah? Because that's something that I noticed often happens is they'll give you a pilot figure, but then the belts don't actually
Or you know what?
connect into the seat.
He fits into the seat nice enough to where I don't know. Yeah, you know what? That might be something you could probably add into that. Is the belt actually connecting to the seat? Speaking of which, did everyone see that video of the guy punching out of the F-35 Bravo the other day?
Yeah.
That was pretty incredible, man.
I think that was, I don't know that they've come out and said yet, but it really looked like an auto eject issue. I think he had it made, and all of a
I
sudden
don't know.
it popped
Does that
right.
thing have auto
right.
eject? Is that
Yeah.
something that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it looks like the way he wrote it, and then it popped itself straight, but it was pretty violent the way it righted itself all of a sudden.
Now, what?
And I'm wondering at that point if that's when it kicked him out.
What do you know of auto eject? Then I mean, you're a seat guy, so let's talk to that a little bit, because if you're not positioned, you're gonna get jacked up pretty good, man.
It'll position you in a minute.
Oh, that's okay. That's what the ankle deals are and all that kind of stuff.
The
Okay.
inertia,
Now, what about your arms, though?
The inertia.
Is there any?
No.
Okay.
There were some seats out there that had. Look, none of the modern seats that I've ever seen where it had the wraps that came over the arms. Typically, that's some of your biggest injuries is flailing injuries from arms.
Yeah.
But the way the auto eject sequence works with the F-35, I'm not 100% up on. Obviously, I'm SJU-5, NACE's guy. SJU-5 and 6, SJU-17. But it's my understanding that it has to do with attitude, and it's really for that landing system. I don't know that the other variants have it, but I know that the V-stall version is supposed to have it. I could reach out and find out more about it. I'm now curious, to be honest with you, but
yeah. Wait for the whole accident report to come out and see what they say.
Yeah, that's new technology. Things move forward. Retired.
Glad to get out of there. All
right. So Henry asked if we listened to the Sprue Cutters Union interview with the guys from Edward, with Vlad and those folks. I saw that they had done it. I had not had a chance to listen to it, but
no, I haven't heard that one yet either.
Mine too.
I'll pop it on tomorrow morning while I'm at the bench here.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm glad they're getting a couple of the manufacturers. It's great to hear that kind of input. Because we all know there's so many armchair kit designers out there who think they absolutely know why they should be doing these kits and why not these kits and why they should be molding it this way and why not that way. And it's great to have people who are actually doing these kits say, well, here's the way it really works, right? Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to change anybody's minds. I don't know how many people are going to learn from it, but
yeah, that's really that'd be a great topic, and one that I'd really like to dig into, and that is, and we do have some friends in the industry that we could reach out to and really do it take a lot of research, but to find out what goes into the decision making process when it comes to doing a kit. Why this subject over that subject? What type of market research is done to figure out if an F-35 is going to do better than a Super Hornet, or a Super Hornet do better than a Legacy Hornet? What is the research that's behind that? Because I think all three of them would be great. It would make just a license to print money. So that'd be really something cool to deep dive into.
The F-35 is a good example. I mean, there was how many people came out and said, well, why didn't tell me to do a C or a B? And I mean, I think the most obvious answer there is, well, because they have a connection in Japan with the A.
That's right.
Home market, right? And
not just that, but access to an A.
Right.
Well,
that's huge, I think, with any modeling company, is the access.
Yeah.
Especially if it's going to be done correctly.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people just don't understand that. I think in that specific case, a lot of people don't understand. I think there's a cultural thing, and we see it as well with Bondi. Star Wars kits are so hard to come by, and everybody says, like, how it's Star Wars. How could you not be molding those things constantly?
Yeah.
Gundam, right? why spend all your resources molding a property that you have to pay licenses to versus one that you own outright? But on top of that, the popularity of Gundam for the Japanese market and the Asian market is so much higher than it is for Star Wars.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
well,
You know,
so look at
but
their car subjects as well.
Yeah.
Same thing. They're come out with the Fair Lady and the 240Zs, and then of course we talk about their motorcycle subjects as well. These are all things that are really huge within the Japan market or the Asian market.
You know, and I think that just gets lost on a lot of people. And I use them as one example, but I think it's the same in a lot of cases.
Absolutely.
You know,
I would agree with that.
At the end of the day, the people running these companies, I mean, they have a choice to do what interests them. I mean, Edward's another good example with those crop dusters that they did. You know, like, does that mean anything to people in North America? Certainly not that specific airplane, but I'm sure over there that's probably, you know, I would guess it's a common sight, you know, to see somebody going over, you know, everybody sees those little bumblebee planes flying around. So of course it has resonance.
Yeah.
You know,
I think the biggest surprise to me in recent time here is the we talked about ClearProp earlier. ClearProp coming out with a 48 scale Sky Shark was pretty surprising to me. I mean, because that's
a really obscure one too.
I think they built 3 of those things, and you know, someone like me who loves 50s era naval aviation, man, I was like, holy shit, that's awesome. Give me one. But I can't imagine that they sold many of those. I mean, I don't know, man. Like that more power to them. I would love to see more of that from not only them, but like you know, Models Vit with the P-51H and then the F-82s. You know, I think there's a market for some of the obscure, you know, like a YF-17. I think would be a great one for them to do. An F-16.
The YF-17 would be so cool.
Or like a no shit YF-16. Like you know, because the prototype F-16 is just so different from what we see, and you know, I think, you know, that's kind of a niche little deal that they could jump into for sure. I think it's at least to the U.S. and probably some of the European market. Again, you know, they're over that way, so great. I don't know, yeah, but that one was a big, like when that one come out, I was like, holy cow, that is. I thought I'd never see that. You know?
So Kris, this guy Kris Dirks here, which he's a great American. He's an American treasure right there. This guy, he's what. So Mr. Dirks, what time is it over there in Doha right now? It must be what, you know, 5 a.m., 5:30 a.m. But he's the only guy I know that's built one of those Sky Sharks. And actually, you know,
I'll build one this year.
Attaboy, because it was really, really nice, Kris. I'm just giving you a hard time.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to see you on. I know it's early, or is it late? I don't know.
05:30 over there.
05:30. Yep, that's what I thought. Yeah.
Hope you're enjoying it.
Yeah.
I think there's room. I'm guessing there's more room now to be a niche subject manufacturer than there was 5 or 10 years ago, right? It's a way of, you can even differentiate yourself by building those kind of things. I mean, because like in the case of ClearProp, I mean, their most recent one, now they've jumped into like World War I aviation with the Airco DH-9, but like they've also got a Super Frelon helicopter that's supposedly in the works, and and thankfully they're supposed to be, their MiG-23 should be out before too long. I mean, you know, not that I consider that to be a niche or obscure aircraft, but what kid is out there right now that's decent of that aircraft, right? So even because it hasn't really been done properly, I mean, it's become a bit of a niche that can be exploited.
Now, are they doing a 48 or 72 scale?
72.
Yeah, I mean, when probably Hasegawa was the last guys that did that in 72 scale, and that thing's like, ancient.
What, 1960s or 70s?
Yeah, golly.
You know, like, it's insane how old some of the Hasegawa tooling is, and it's even more insane how much it retails for now. Right? Yeah. Like you can go out and find a kit that was made in 1960, and it'll it might have been like $3 or $4 when it first came out, and now it's going for $30 or $40 just because it's being popped now. It's like, that's ridiculous.
New decals, new shiny box.
That's right.
Yeah.
Went to a show. Chris Dirks, he really hooked us up on the drive out to Las Vegas last year and tagged the Forrest Gump sign there at remember the cross country run, says I ain't gonna run no more, and put our sticker on the sign there, and actually left it sitting there right over here.
Oh, look at that. Colin saying the Kinetic's working on a.
There we
All
are.
right.
Anyway, funny stuff.
Well, Colin, if you're working with them on that, then I'm sure we're
Which one's
looking
this?
forward to a nice kit.
Oh, a Tudor.
Yeah.
There we go.
That's interesting. There's actually a few of those projects floating around right now. There's a couple that I know are being done, I think 3DP, but that's the first I've heard of one being done injection.
You know, I'll certainly do a Tudor. I would love to do that with the. I have a picture of the Snowbirds with it was during their 30th anniversary. Actually, I think it was the year after, but I was in the Blue Angels at the time, and it was our 50th anniversary, and they came. It was our 50th anniversary because they came to Pensacola, and we have their jet sitting there next to ours with the 50th. It was pretty cool. So
yeah, nice.
That would be a great side by side. Yeah, I would certainly jump on one.
Yeah. You know, one of the years that I was at Picola, right after getting recalled, it must have been 2002 or 2003. They had all 4 teams there for that show.
Yeah.
For the home. They had the obviously the Blues, T-Birds, Snowbirds,
2002. That
Golden Knights. It must have been 2002 show.
That had been the 60th anniversary.
I mean, they were just doing what they do for the, when y'all do the, when you guys would go to Nellis and then them guys would come up, they were doing that thing, but they were, at the same time, the Snowbirds were doing a America tour, so they were like, hey, we're in the neighborhood, we're going to come in there too. Yeah, we had the big softball match and all that stuff out there at the ball fields, and there might have been a little bit of beer drinking involved in all those why not?
Reindeer games. A little bit. So, all right. Well, hey, look, we're pushing about an hour and a half here, and I got to tell you, time's flying. And I'm not gonna lie to you.
That's the theme of 2022, I think.
Yeah, man.
Where did it go?
I could sit here and probably drink 3 or 4 more beers and shoot the stuff, but I don't know that my body coming out of COVID needs to.
I got up at 4:00 this morning, so I'm not
a little rough.
Sticking around.
There's a 4:00 in the morning.
Yeah. There is. I've seen it a lot this week as well.
Buddy of mine took me duck hunting, so I had to get up early. Got to get up before the ducks, man.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
This whitey duck hunting. Wow.
It was fun. I'm hooked, man. I'll do it again for sure.
Really?
Yeah, man.
Did you clean your duck?
Did you bag any?
No, I only got one. I was talking to Darren earlier. It was just too nice of a day down here. And it's been warm, so they haven't pushed down from Canada yet. So I got one. The guy I was with got a mallard, 2 mallards. I got a bufflehead, which they don't taste very well. Very, very good, from what I understand.
A little gamey.
So we gave that to the dog to use as a training aid. He's trying to train up his dog.
Yeah.
And so he's been taking whenever he gets something like that, he'll put it in the freezer for a few days and then get the dog to chase it out in the river. So
there you go. Get the dog to run, jump, and swim out and get it, huh?
Yep. It was funny when we hit it. He told, he sends the dog. He's like, "All right, go get him. Go get the bird. Go get the bird." He jumps out of the blind, jumps off the end of the pier, and grabs the first decoy he could, and come running back with the decoy, all proud. We were like, "No, wrong one, dude." Like, yeah, you got some, and that's why he was like, "Yeah, we need to get him used to that scent of these things."
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, as we talked about earlier, we're fully into winter now, so all the ducks are going to be like, "F this, we're heading south."
Yeah, they're heading this way.
Yeah, it was entirely too nice today. We didn't see much.
Well, I think we're going to go ahead and draw this to a close. Kris, I do want to say real quick before we do it, that the wife and I have already discussed this. You know, I'm building the P51 for the Moosearoo Cup. Obviously hosted by IPMS Hamilton. And that shows in March.
Yes, it is. End of March.
And I will put it out there now to God and everybody, but the wife and I have already decided we are making that trek up there. So
that'll be good to see you, man.
Yep, we're heading that way, and then of course that's going to be the first stop, and then we're taking another week and a half and doing some Canadian travels up there through the second half of March. So I'm looking forward to that, and I'm certainly looking forward to sitting down, shaking your hand, and having a cold beer, mano a mano. I think it'd be a good time.
I know there's already a bunch of us who are hoteling it the night before, so there'll be lots of hands to shake and lots of beers to be drunk, and
that's good
I'm looking
stuff.
forward to it.
If you're staying in Hamilton up there, please, shoot me offline here the information so I can. I'll go ahead and get a place at the same place, so that we're all centrally located. That'd be a lot of damn fun.
Sounds good.
And I think we the geeks here, we've talked about that as a group coming up there.
Yeah.
For the show. So if we can get all four of us, that'd be great. If we can get one or two, man, it'd just be fun. It'd be a lot of fun. And
it's a good show. I mean, any show that you're in an aviation museum, I think is something special. I mean, it's one thing to see great models. It's another thing to see the history that has driven that hobby right there with it. Like last year, half the show was sitting under the wings of a Catalina, and it just reframes your whole perspective on it, and being able to walk in around a Lancaster or walk around a Tudor that they had sitting right adjacent. I mean, I can't underscore how important those kind of experiences have been for me, and being a lifelong fan of aviation and of the hobby. And I think all these things are super important to the health of our hobby. So
I do too.
If you guys can come up, it'll be awesome to see you. Or if a couple of guys can come up, it'll be fantastic. Crossing my fingers that I can
go ahead.
Cross my fingers that I can come down and hit your inaugural show. I think that'll be a lot of fun.
I'm looking forward to it
for the first time, but have to get some stars to align. But I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Well, we got you covered lodging wise. Just if you're coming, you let us know. So
sounds good.
We'll work that out for sure, because it's literally I think it's 4 miles from Whitey. It's like 8 miles from me. So we are right there. And with Hamilton, Whitey's obligated. So I'm already holding him to it. He's a member of IPMS Canada. He's absolutely needs to go. there he is right there. So
there you go.
Latest issue.
Bruce Worrell says there's a bunch of them at the Courtyard Marriott.
Yeah,
man. Yep.
There it is. So all right, so I'll take a look at that. And Kris, I'll hit you offline. I need to get the proper place and time and all that stuff. But what's this? Robbie wants to know what everybody's asking Santa for.
Ooh, man. Everything.
Everything? Gift cards, Robbie.
Gift cards. Yes.
Gift cards.
That's my thing.
Gift cards.
Blue Brothers, Andy's Hobby Headquarters, whatever.
Yeah, that's it.
Yep.
Send them to Whitey.
I think
one of the
things I know, I sent the link anyway to my daughter because she was really needling me about what I needed. So it's time for me to jump into the OptiVisor realm. So I sent her a link for one of those, and so I'm like, okay, that's my next hobby purchase tool wise, I guess.
I'm with Colin here. So if you look at my dungeon, this is an unfinished basement, and I probably got 1,100 square foot down here of nothing, concrete and wood. And I also share the space over here with my professional daily office because I work from home. And here again, concrete and wood with a backdrop that makes it look like an office. It's really just a fake thing for video. So here after the first year, I want Santa Claus to help me finish this off, so I have a proper place to build models back over in a different area away from my professional work area, so I can.
Yeah.
I'm in my aluminum lined bunker.
That's a closet. That's a closet. Literally a closet.
It is. It's good though.
About,
if I had a bigger space than this, it would just be a bigger mess.
What is that, about 5 by 6 or something like that?
Nah, it's about 5 by 10. It's pretty long
5 by
going
10,
back that way. Yeah.
Well, I'm working with about 4 by 8 for both my modeling and my studio. So
yeah, that's really all you
really
need.
makes it problematic when you're sitting there working on something for your day job that's not really piquing you, and you can 3 feet over is like
exactly
you're working on. You're going, I could just slide 3 feet that way, and my life would improve 100%.
I did that for 2 years working from here because I did that. My wife would come down and be like, "Aren't you supposed to be working?" And I'm like, "I am."
I like the way Matt McDougall puts it, and I'm going to use his philosophy too, and that is to get my creative juices flowing. I might sand on something or do something over here. I like that approach. So, and Whitey, Mark says you need to come out of the closet. So that's
har har har.
So we'll go ahead and close this up real quick for the listeners. I hope y'all have enjoyed tonight's live stream. I want to thank Kris for coming on and shooting stuff with us. He's God, I can't believe you said you've only been back in the hobby for 4 years. It's just amazing.
Yeah, your work's outstanding.
Yeah,
man,
thanks very much, guys. Really appreciate it.
If y'all have any questions, you can shoot them to us if you have questions for us or for Kris at contact@modelgeekspodcast.com. We'll make sure that they get to Kris. Or Kris, do they have a way they can get to you? Do you have a contact type? If not, we just go through ours and we can.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm on all the major socials: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all at LiftRom72. My website's liftrom72.com. Pretty sure I put a contact thing on there if you got questions. And that's something I think I want to sort of stress with everybody. I'm happy to answer questions. I'm happy to share. 4 years back in the hobby, I'm not where I'm at by myself. Like, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, as they say. I've done a lot of reading of what other people have done.
Yeah,
not a big video guy, but I've done a little bit of that. But like guys like Mike Rinaldi, Adam Wilder, Daniel Tamarbide, I could go on, and lots of guys who would not consider themselves to be famous modelers. Like there's been a lot of lateral thinking, and so I'm, whenever I can, I'm happy to pass knowledge along, to share ideas, to help people work through things. Because I mean, that's where I'm at right now. So it's all I can do to sort of put that forward. And whether it's on one of my channels or I'm working on a book project right now that I'm excited about. So there'll be stuff there. And just if you got questions, hit me up on one of those social channels or on my website, and I'll do what I can.
You hit something there when you mentioned some pretty heavy hitters, and the one thing about each and every one of them is they are willing at the drop of a hat to give advice when advice is needed.
Mm-hmm.
They are not out there giving unsolicited advice, but if you want it, you need the help, they give it. And I mean, that's just wicked. And you're absolutely right.
If I can jump in with one other thing about that is, I think the one thing that surprises people a lot is when I say that Mike Rinaldi has probably been my biggest influence, not necessarily on like technical things, although that's been important, but on philosophy. But people laugh that my biggest influence as an aircraft builder is a tank modeler.
Oh, but I think he's a pretty good aircraft builder.
Well,
too,
yeah, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
But certainly, his chops have come through tanks, and that really kind of gets a lot of people, right? But when you start, what I learned from him is how to think about things, right? Because when we get back to that issue of problem solving, and I don't want to digress too far as we're wrapping this up, but part of the problem solving is not just the doing, it's the observing, right? And what I got from him was really about how we think about things, how we observe things before we even start mucking about with it on a model. How did this mud get like this? How did this dirt get like this? And so that's a big key. Don't just stay inside your silo when it comes to weathering and learning. Look at what everybody else is doing. Look what the car guys are doing. Look what the tank guys are doing.
We've said that as well. I mean, there's just the techniques you can take across genres, and you can apply. Don't stovepipe.
That's right.
Don't stovepipe.
Branch out. Take whatever you can get and run with it.
Exactly. So. Well, great advice. Whitey, any parting shots before we kick out?
No, just thanks again, Kris, for sitting down, hanging out with us tonight.
Thanks, Sam.
And one other thing, does this record and will it be on our? Because I see a couple of folks are coming in late, so if they want to watch the beginning, because
absolutely,
Kris covered his technique there on doing that metal work. Yeah, it was definitely beneficial in the talk on the oil paints.
Yeah, So for everybody that's come in towards the tail end of this, you can find the recorded version on the Model Geeks podcast page, the Model Geeks Model Shack Facebook group, the Grumpy Old Scale Modeler Facebook group, as well as the Grumpy Old Modeler YouTube channel. So it's there. Go back and please, if you want to learn something about the oil paint rendering, the chipping, so and so, we've talked about all that in the weathering. Please go back and give it a look. If you guys want to see more, the listeners, if y'all want to see more of this type of live content from the geeks here, please let us know. I know I do. I enjoy the hell out of doing it. I don't think that we do it enough. It's a lot of fun. If it's an added chore, I'm not going to lie, but I don't mind doing it. I really enjoy it. If that's something y'all would like to see, we'll certainly make it happen. It's all about, I don't want to steal an IPMS logo, but it's all about helping each other. How's that? So,
probably do another one in a couple of weeks. I mean, because we're not going to drop another episode till probably mid-January.
Yeah,
of on our hiatus here. Yeah. So I don't know, maybe do one after Christmas.
Yeah.
Pop on here and
it'll be pretty quick. I'm going to Louisiana.
Oh yeah, whatever. We'll see. Whenever you get time.
Well, you've already got a bunch of guys chipping in that they want to see more. So I don't think there's any question there.
Yeah. So cool. All right. Well, folks, y'all have, please, from us to you and your families, have a very happy holiday, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, whatever it is that you're going to celebrate out there. Please enjoy it. Enjoy your time with your friends and family. Be safe. And if I don't see you until after the new year, please have a happy new year. And it's great. Great mingling with you folks. So peace out for D-Ran.
Amen.
All right. Good night, y'all.
Good night, y'all. Thanks, everybody, for joining in.